This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcasts. This is where we get to talk about college sports, football, basketball, mainly just those two, as we don't dive into any of the other college sports. But Brandon, today we got, it's been a while since I've said it, we got a jam-packed show. College football playoff
It's been a while
rankings.
since you said it. It was last week.
Did I say it last week?
You say it every week.
I forget sometimes when I say it, but we do have a jam-packed show. College football playoff rankings are out. We're going to react to those. We got Florida with a new coach. They got to search for a new coach as McElwain is gone out of Florida. And then we're going to look at the Iowa State Cyclones, the shocker of this college football season after beating TCU this past week. Then we're going to make our picks to end the show. But Brandon, I want to get right into it. College football playoff rankings. The first ones were announced tonight. We have a top four rankings of Georgia at number 1, Alabama at number 2, Notre Dame at number 3, Clemson number 4, with our first out being Oklahoma at 5 and Ohio State at 6. I want to ask you, what are your first reactions of our first ever college football playoff rankings for 2017?
Well, I'll be honest and say that I'm surprised that Alabama still isn't number 1. Because Georgia, they're there, and they've beaten some ranked opponents, but I don't think that there's much difference in what
Alabama's doing.
It's not like they've done so much more than what Alabama has done. But how I look at it is that doesn't necessarily bother me too much. Alabama's at number 2. These first rankings, they don't mean much. They don't mean much. I'll be honest about it.
To quote Jim Morris Sr., they mean diddly poo. That's what they mean, Brandon. Diddly poo. And I love how, unlike ours, like our rankings that we put out, because we put out our first rankings earlier today to get ready for these, everyone was like, well, not everyone, but we got a comment or two saying, you guys don't know how the committee is going to vote. It's like, yeah, we're not voting for the committee. We are giving you our rankings. Those were our rankings, and everyone has a little bit different of how they go in. If you look back at the last few years for the college football playoff, look at the teams that were there, then look at the final ones. I believe it was, 2015? Yeah, 2015, Alabama in those first college football rankings were 4. They were 4 overall. Ended up going to the college football playoff and were a 1 or 2 team in that playoff because that was the year they lost to Ezekiel Elliott and the Ohio State Buckeyes in the semifinal round. This is like, and with Alabama, they're the only team where I'm not really worried of where they are because of what Nick Saban and his philosophy is. Like, I bet you Nick Saban didn't even watch the reveal show. He doesn't even care where the team is because they got to get ready for LSU this weekend. Then after that, they got to get ready for Mississippi State. The job is not done, although we have had our first college football rankings tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that it's interesting rankings, of course, that come out, and there's always going to be someone who is upset with their team didn't get in, or why is this one in here, this one in here. And I think one of the interesting things that Kirk Herbstreit said, and how we really need to look at things, and how hopefully the committee will look at things, is don't think that the eye test is underrated. Because it's something that certainly should be used as a way to take into effect who is in the top 4. Because all these other things can happen. This loss could happen. It could be a 1-loss team. Then are they out? As Herbstreit said, I still got eyes. I still saw what they did throughout the year. They're one of the best football teams. So I think that that's really, really important. And right now, and I'll tell you, I'm not even happy. And I've told Ricky this before we even started recording today. I'm not happy with the rankings that I gave him. I gave off the cuff, just here, take these rankings. It was late on a Sunday. I really wasn't fully with it. Let's be honest.
A little inebriated at the time. Not,
it was
not too bad,
it was a Sunday fun day, man.
It was
went out for a friend's birthday. It was a Sunday fun day downtown. Yeah,
I was gonna say best bud's birthday. Of course, you're living it up, but I'm like, oh crap.
So Ricky throws this on me Sunday night. Hey, you think you could get these to me?
Let's be completely honest. Recording on a Tuesday this week. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I would have surprised you right now with them, and you would have had to give me off the cuff. But sober off the cuff, college football playoff rankings. You know what's the team, though, that surprises me in the top 4? Clemson. How the hell are they in the top 4? And the reason being, and I'm not saying that, I know there are Clemson fans who listen to this podcast that go, oh, that's just Ricky being a hater. Ricky is being a Clemson hater. Sound the alarm. Because Ricky is hating on Clemson yet again. However, it's going off of what you just said with Kurt Herbstreit and Alabama. I'm going to use the same thing for Clemson. I'm using the eye test. And if I'm using the eye test out there, I feel like Oklahoma and Ohio State should be ranked higher than Clemson. Because this is a team, yes, they are only a one-loss team, but you lose to Syracuse, where not even ranked right now, you lose to them. Ohio State's only loss is to Oklahoma, who's a top 5 college football playoff team. Oklahoma lost to Iowa State, where at least they are in the rankings. They are a top 15 college football playoff team. Clemson loses to Syracuse. Also, I have seen earlier in the year struggling against Auburn, struggling against Boston College. I know they beat them 34-7, but it was 7-7 up until the fourth quarter. I don't know how they're in the top 4 of the playoff at this point in the season, because there are other teams that I would definitely put ahead of them right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now that, kind of looking at things again and saying who I think the 4 best teams out there are right now are Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. And the reason why I have to say Ohio State is they beat Penn State. They did. Otherwise
and they came back to win that game.
18-point deficit. You come back in the fourth quarter. You did a good job. You did a good job. And JT Barrett certainly came to play there, especially in that fourth quarter. But that's who I would be putting in there, because those are the 4, to me, best teams right now. I think that Oklahoma's on the cusp. Oklahoma State's on the cusp. Penn State certainly is. Clemson's around, but they haven't been too impressive, since they lost to Syracuse. They haven't been that impressive. They haven't had any statement wins then, not to me. So I think that those are the 4 teams that I had mentioned that are the best 4 teams. And ultimately, another thing, as Herbstreit said, that's who you want to have in there. You want to have the 4 best teams in college football, because you want to have the best playoff you can.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want. How I relate these first rankings to is whether you're in high school or college, you can go either way. It's basically, and I know things are a little different now, back when we were in school, because now everything is online and you can keep up with your grades every single day when you turn something in. But it just reminds me of back in the day when the teacher would go, okay, we're at the midpoint season of the quarter or of the semester. I'm going to call you guys up one by one just to see where your grade is, so that you can know, what do I have to do the rest of the semester or the rest of the quarter to get the grade that I want. That's what these rankings are. Just because you're in the top 4 doesn't mean, okay, I can sit there and coast because I'm a playoff team. Just because you're out doesn't mean, you know what? Throw in the towel. We're out. We're not a playoff team. This is where you look at it. Okay, we're 6, we're 7, we're 5. This is what we still need to do. We still have games ahead of us, much like we were in school, where it's like, you know what? I've got a C right now. You know what? I can get to that B. This is what I have to do to get to that B. There are some teams where, let's be completely honest, a team like 23 at Memphis or maybe 25 Washington State, you're not getting that A. I'm sorry, you are not getting that A. You're not getting into the playoff. But you can still get that B. You can still rise in these rankings. But other teams like Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, TCU, Wisconsin, Miami, Oklahoma State, anyone in the top 10, maybe even the top 15, all right, now we got a chance here to go to the playoffs still. We can still get that A. That's what I think with these rankings. And I look at a ton of teams. The thing that we also got to keep in mind is we have a lot of different scenarios that are going to play out. For example, that Clemson team that I bring up, and I'm like, how are they in the top 4 right now? Well, if they lose to NC State, they are going to basically not make the playoffs in my mind, because not only would they have 2 losses, but I believe I was looking at a graphic on ESPN. Based off of this game, if NC State wins against Clemson, they will have like a 95% chance to win their division of the ACC. If Clemson wins the game, they have a 98% chance to win the Atlantic in the ACC. So basically, whoever wins that game is having, okay, we are still in the running for the playoff. The other team won't, because they most likely won't get that shot to win the ACC in the title game. Wisconsin, they just got to win the rest of their games, play whoever comes out of the Big Ten East, hope that is enough for the committee to think highly of them. TCU, same thing. Hey, I know we lost to Iowa State. Let's win the rest of our games, win the Big 12. If we win the Big 12, then we'll be in good standing to hopefully make the playoffs. There are a lot of things left for each team to do. I want to ask you this, though. The one team in the top 3 we haven't talked about, Notre Dame. Do you see them as a pretender or a contender now that we physically see Notre Dame number 3 in the CFP rankings?
No, I don't think that Notre Dame is a pretender at all, but I think one of the reasons, too, why I was saying back the last time when we had this conversation, in terms of can Notre Dame make the college football playoff? Yeah. And I had said, no, I don't think so, just because of who was in front of them, how things were kind of looking at the time. They're a good team, but I didn't feel like they were going to be able to crack the top 4 when things were all said and done. Well, that's changed now.
Well, now they got a win over NC State since we've had that conversation.
Not even that. Not even them getting the win over NC State. All the movement out in front of them. That, what I think, is what has helped propel them to where they are right now. And also because, I mean, they're just taking care of business. They're just taking care of business. They're coming through. They roll USC. They roll NC State. I mean, they're getting some big wins. They're getting some really, really big wins. And some people would say that NC State more legitimate than USC is this year, just because NC State kind of came from a place where no one was looking at them. No one was looking at them.
They even lost
quote
their
unquote,
first game.
and then they come storming to a place of, relevance. But USC, they start off at this place, expectations higher than a guy on drugs, and then they end up just kind of coasting, fading, and then they are here what they are today. So Notre Dame, this team has what it takes to hold down a college football playoff spot. They do. But it's almost one of those, it's in their hands. It's in their hands. If they do not lose,
they're a playoff team.
They're in. They're in. At this point now, if they do not lose, which Miami, I think, is going to be the biggest test for them. I think that's a week ago when we talked about this. They were the team that I thought would be the biggest test out of all these 3. They ace number 1. Now they need to get Miami after they play Wake Forest, which should be a victory. On the road at Miami. It's going to be tough. But here's the thing. Notre Dame wins all these games, they're in. It's simple. It's simple because they're already in right now. They can't win over 2 ranked teams, Stanford holding for right now at 21, and not then stay where they are.
Well, and the thing I'm kind of thinking about is you're talking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame wins. They went out. They're in. I feel like at worst from the SEC right now, we're going to get one, at least one. Alabama or Georgia will be in, maybe depending on if they win out and play each other. Depending on how that game goes, does the committee keep them in at maybe 1 and 4? We got a lot of things left to go. Oklahoma still needs to, right now, do what they need to do to get into the Big 12 title game, because right now, if we're looking at the standings in the Big 12, they're not playing for that game right now. That game is between, it's a rematch of the game we just saw this past weekend. It is Iowa State and TCU fighting it out for the Big 12 crown at the end of the season. So, although they're at 5, they've got work to do. How is the Big 10 going to play out? Ohio State has games still against Michigan, who I know Michigan people are saying they're not the Michigan of old because they're finally unranked for, I believe, the first time in 3 years. However, that's a rivalry game. Anything can happen.
They're going to roll them.
They also
Ohio State will roll Michigan.
I'm just trying to give Michigan a little bit of a chance, even though I think
I'm just
Ohio
trying to
State
be
will win.
I'm just trying to be realistic and make it simple.
Let's be honest. Buckeyes will probably win, but into a rivalry game, I'm still going to bring that any given Sunday, any given Saturday type of moment. They still have to play Michigan State. You look at Penn State. They have to play Michigan State up next. Like, they don't get a break after losing to Ohio State. Their next game, boom, right away, we're playing Michigan State. Then you have Wisconsin. They probably have the easiest of the Big Ten tests, but they still have to beat whoever comes out of the Big Ten East. And then you have the ACC, where is it going to be Clemson? Is it going to be an NC State who's at 20 right now? Will it be Miami? And then there's the conference that we're probably leaving out this year, which is this year's Big 12 conference, and that's the Pac-12. Their first place team in the Pac-12 is Washington at 12. Washington at 12. After that, I'm looking USC at 17 as their next team. I think that out of all the conferences, out of all the Power Fives, it's the Pac-12 that right now will most likely be left out when we get to the final rankings at the end of the regular season.
Pac-12 should be left out. They've been the weakest. They have been not good. Mm-hmm. They have been very underwhelming this season. But what I think is interesting, I want to go back to the Big 12. The Big 12 for a minute. And you talked about Oklahoma. Currently, a team sitting outside of the top 10 is Oklahoma State at number 11. I still think that Oklahoma State has a chance to be able to possibly make a run here at the end.
They do.
Try and make, I don't want to say make a name for themselves, but try and get themselves out there and up there so that towards the end of the year, they can say, hey, we beat Oklahoma. Hopefully they'll be able to say that. Hopefully they'll be able to say we beat a very, very good Iowa State team this year. And then they've got K-State, and then they've got Kansas. And if they could win their next 4 games, I think Oklahoma State can make a really, really strong push for a playoff possibility.
It is going to be a battle the rest of the way in the Big 12. And I know that I don't want to get too far into it because I know we're going to touch this later on when we get to Iowa State and look at them specifically. But each team has their own way to go, obviously. The Cowboys have 2 ranked opponents, like you said, Oklahoma and Iowa State. Oklahoma has Oklahoma State and TCU that they still have to get through. And I'm going to even say at the end of the year, West Virginia, because they have been a quality opponent for teams this season. I mean, Oklahoma State, I didn't think they'll do it, but they won 50-39 against that Mountaineer team. TCU, they probably have, I'm going to say in air quotes, the easiest of roads because they only play 1 ranked opponent, and that's Oklahoma on the road. And then you have Iowa State, who, again, only 1 ranked opponent, but they do get West Virginia on the road as well. The Big 12 is going to be interesting to me because the way I see this all going down as we go through week by week is Notre Dame will consistently be there if they win. You have Alabama and Georgia. As long as they stay undefeated, they will stay 1-2, maybe swap here and there until we get to the SEC title game, and then we'll decide who's number 1. That'll probably be a 1-2 showdown this year, the first 1-2 showdown and the only one we're going to get this year in the regular season. and then you have the rest. How's everything going to play out in the Big Ten? How's everything going to play out in the ACC? How's everything going to play out in the Big 12? The thing I wanted to ask you to end this segment is, outside of the top 6, who's your one team, 7 and beyond, that you say that they are my best team to play themselves back into the playoffs by the time we get to the end of the regular season?
Outside of the top 4? Or
top 6. So from Penn State and lower. So Penn State, TCU, Wisconsin, Miami, anyone below Penn State. Who's the team you're looking at and you're going, this team will play themselves into the playoffs, most likely could play themselves into the playoffs when we get to the end of the year?
Outside of Penn State?
You can include Penn State. So Penn State and below. So you can say Penn State if you want. I know I'm hitting you with a tough question here.
I'd say Penn State.
Okay.
I'd say Penn State. I'd say Penn State, or I'd say Oklahoma State.
I'm going to go TCU. TCU or Wisconsin. And the reason being, Wisconsin, they're in a prime situation within their regular season to win out, because the rest of their regular season, they don't play a single ranked opponent. Like the rest of the way at Indiana. Now, Indiana can be tough. I'm not going to say it's going to be a cakewalk for them. That's going to be tough. Iowa could be tough. But then it's like a Michigan team that's underperformed this year. Minnesota, I think Wisconsin wins that game. I look at the rest of their season, it's like, wow, they could go undefeated, not playing a single ranked team this year, and then all they would have to do is beat an Ohio State or beat a Penn State in the Big Ten title game, and they could go to the playoff. Like, if I am saying fake, you know how Colin Cowherd said Iowa, I think it was either last year or the year before, he kept calling them a fake ID team?
Yes.
Wisconsin would be my fake ID team this year, because my biggest complaint with Wisconsin is, who have you played? Who have you played? And part of it's none of their fault. It's basically Badger fans are going to say, well, Ricky, we're only playing who you put in front of us. It's not our fault that the Big Ten West sucks and we're not in the Big Ten East. We're only playing who you put in front of us. But at the same time, I just look at them and I go, who did you play? TCU, I look at them as a possible, because like I said, out of the Big 12 teams, they have positively the best road, because they don't have to play too many ranked opponents. Texas could be tough.
But incorrect, though. Yes. So correct on what you're saying in ranked.
Yeah.
But incorrect on an easy way. Texas has showed...
I didn't say easy.
You kind of did.
I didn't say easy.
Kind of. Texas is a team that has clearly showed that they've got some life now here in them, which you're happy about. On the road at Oklahoma won't be easy. Texas Tech, I'd like to say that that should be pretty easy, but it may not be. Baylor's a win. So they have 3 very difficult games. So does Oklahoma State. So does Oklahoma. So I think that we've got a really, really good couple of slates here coming in the next couple of weeks between these Big 12 opponents.
And I just want to say, didn't say easy.
Check
Play
the tape.
back the tape. Did not say easy. They have the best chance, I said, of getting through
easy. It all means the same.
Although, like I was going to say, it was exactly what you said. Texas and Texas Tech could be tough games, but I think TCU can get through them. It's really that Oklahoma game that's going to be the big test. I want to turn it on to you guys, though. Let us know, what do you think of the committee's rankings 1 through 4, and then the first out with Oklahoma and Ohio State at 5 and 6? Who would your playoffs be? I know some of you already did that for our playoff rankings, but now that you see the committee's rankings, how would you change yours a little bit? And let us know what team outside the top 6 you could see creeping into the playoff as we get through the regular season and go to the final playoff rankings at the end of the year.